They said a woman could never survive the brutal world of Navy SEALs. They laughed when she picked up the sniper rifle. But on the battlefield, when the enemy commander himself was crawling in the dirt, begging her for mercy, the laughter turned into silence. This is the story they never wanted you to hear. If you want more untold war stories like this, gripping with twists, betrayal, and shocking truths, then hit that subscribe button right now, because you're about to witness a journey that will leave you breathless. They mocked her the day she arrived at the Navy SEAL training compound, whispering jokes about how a woman could never match the steel nerves, precision, and deadly instincts demanded of America's most elite warriors. But she kept her silence, her gaze steady, her heart burning with an unshakable resolve born not from arrogance, but from the memory of her father, a decorated Marine sniper who was killed in an ambush overseas, and whose last words to her, written in a letter discovered after his death, told her to never let the world decide her limits. So every bruise, every mile run with sand grinding into her boots, every breathless second underwater became her defiance against doubt. And when the training instructors barked, when the other candidates laughed at her trembling arms as she carried logs across the surf, when even the senior snipers smirked, at the sight of her slim frame carrying a rifle nearly as long as her body, she gritted her teeth and learned not only to survive, but to master, because she knew that someday the battlefield would ask her for more than strength. It would demand patience, clarity, and a heart ruthless enough to end a life in order to protect countless others. And as the months of hell passed, the laughter of her peers grew quieter, replaced by wary respect, when her first live fire trial proved her aim was not only steady, but unnervingly precise, so much so that a target at a distance others struggled to hit became her signature kill shot. Yet, even then, the old guard refused to let go of their disbelief, whispering behind her back, waiting for the day she would fail and confirm their bias, never realizing that the storm she was building inside herself was preparing her for a mission that would one day silence not only their laughter, but the arrogance of enemies across the ocean. For war was coming, and she was destined to stand in its darkest shadow. Her first mission came sooner than anyone expected. A covert operation deep inside hostile territory where a terrorist network was gathering under the command of a man so feared that even rival warlords whispered his name as if speaking it too loudly would summon death itself, and while the other SEALs prepared their gear with the usual bravado, some still doubted her presence, murmuring that she was only being tested as a political stunt. But when their boots hit the dirt in the dead of night, it wasn't politics that would save them, it was skill. And as the team crept through ruined villages and shattered fields, she carried her sniper rifle with a quiet reverence, scanning every rooftop, every broken window, every shadow that shifted under the moonlight, until the ambush came. Sudden and brutal, bullets shredding the air as enemies poured out from the ruins and chaos erupted around them. Yet in that storm of gunfire, her calm was frightening. Her scope found the muzzle flashes, and with each squeeze of her finger, another threat dropped before it could cut down her brothers in arms, her precision carving a shield around them until even the veterans hardened. Men who once sneered at her realized they were alive because of her steady eye, and when the dust cleared, her kill count was higher than the rest of the squad combined. But what no one realized then was that the man they were hunting, the ruthless commander, had seen her work from afar, through the scope of his own binoculars, and instead of feeling only anger, he felt something colder, fear, for he recognized in her the same merciless patience he had wielded against his enemies for years. And in that moment, a twist of fate began to coil, one that would lead not to a clean kill, but to a confrontation so personal, so raw, that it would shake both of them to their core.
The weeks that followed turned her into a ghost in the eyes of the enemy, her name whispered among fighters who once mocked the very idea of fearing a woman, yet now trembled at the thought of the unseen sniper who struck from impossible distances and vanished without a trace. And while her own team began to trust her with blind loyalty, their missions growing bolder under the protection of her rifle. The enemy commander, once untouchable in his arrogance, grew restless, his pride bleeding into desperation as he ordered traps, decoys, and relentless searches to flush her out. But time and again it was his men who fell, never catching so much as a glimpse of the woman who haunted his ranks. Until at last he made a decision born of obsession. He would lure her, not with a trap for her team, but with bait aimed at her heart. And when intelligence reports reached her unit about civilians being rounded up in a small village known to be innocent of any resistance, her commander hesitated, suspecting a setup. But she knew the truth, whether trap or not. Those people would die unless someone intervened, so she pushed, insisted. And when the mission was finally greenlit, she took her position high above the village, watching through her scope as the enemy commander himself stepped into the open square, his men dragging terrified families into the dirt, shouting for the sniper to reveal herself. And in that instant she realized it wasn't just bait, it was a challenge, a duel written in blood, the hunter calling the hunted into the light. And though every instinct screamed that walking into his game would be suicide, she steadied her breathing, locked her scope on his cruel smile, and whispered to herself the promise she had carried since training: "They'll never laugh again." The square erupted in chaos the moment her first shot rang out, a single crack slicing the silence as the commander's right-hand man dropped before he could raise his rifle, and the villagers screamed, scattering as bullets shredded the air. But she was no longer just a shadow in the distance. She was everywhere, each breath a measured kill, each pull of the trigger cutting down the circle of men who thought they had caged her. Until the commander's arrogance dissolved into panic, his voice breaking as he barked desperate orders. Yet every soldier who moved to protect him collapsed with a hole through his chest, his army crumbling like sand in a storm. And when the smoke cleared, he found himself alone, dragging his leg through blood-soaked dirt, his once feared eyes wide with the terror of a man who had finally met an enemy more ruthless than himself. And as he fell to his knees, trembling, he raised his hands and screamed into the ruins for her to stop, begging for mercy, his voice cracking with the weight of humiliation. But through her scope, she did not see a commander anymore. She saw the embodiment of every doubt, every sneer, every voice that had told her she was unworthy. And for a heartbeat, she considered ending him right there, one last bullet to silence the past forever. Yet discipline held her finger, because mercy was its own weapon. And leaving him alive to crawl back in disgrace, his empire of fear shattered by a woman he had underestimated, would echo louder than any gunshot. So she withdrew into the shadows once more, her team exfiltrating under her cover, the villagers freed, and the legend of the female SEAL sniper sealed in history, not by the men who doubted her, but by the commander who had once mocked the idea of her existence, and was now remembered only for the day he begged her for mercy.